fellas.
Thank you, voice girl, and welcome to another edition of the Manspace Podcast. Now, this is the voice of Russ, and with me, as always, he's not here. He's working his part-time job as a mall Santa. But don't fret, Manspace Nation. I have a special guest who goes by the name of Dr. Sheldon Greaves, a man who took learning into his own hands. I mean, literally. After getting creative just to survive grad school, Dr. Sheldon realized that traditional academic life wasn't for him, so he built his own path instead. He worked in the nonprofit world promoting science literacy. He co-founded a university for intelligence and counterterrorism professionals, published papers on ancient wordplay, and even joined a team of amateur scientists to launch a rocket ship into outer space. These days, he's all about helping people rediscover the joy of learning for its own sake, not for grades or titles, but for the adventure. And oh, I am thrilled to have him on the show today. Manspace Nation, please put your hands together for Dr. Sheldon Greaves. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Russ. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, right off the bat, I just got to ask you about this amateur rocket ship. What was the motivation and the mindset that said, hey, this is something that we just really want to do?
Well, okay. First of all, I grew up in the shadow of the space race. So the whole idea of going into outer space, I mean, that was just like the coolest thing ever.
Right.
This was, 1968. Star Trek came on, so the idea of spacey stuff, very cool. At the time, I was a member of an organization called the Society for Amateur Scientists, and they were participating in a contest. Oh, excuse me here, little friend. It was called the Cat's Prize, and
perfect timing for the cat to come up.
Yeah, but CATS stood for Cheap Access to Space. And the prize was for the first non-governmental organization who could design, build, and launch a vehicle that would carry a 2-kilogram payload to an altitude of 200 kilometers. Now, 2 kilograms, that's what you get when you take a 2-liter soda bottle and fill it with water. That's 2 kilograms. And 200 kilometers, just to give you a sense of perspective, the space shuttle used to orbit at about 180. So it's out there. It's way out there. Now, I became just absolutely enchanted with the idea of working on this. It was just got me incredibly excited. So I sort of beat down the door and got myself onto the team. I am not by any stretch a rocket scientist, but I found out that I did have something of a flair for logistics. So I was helping to get materials. I was coordinating with something at Vandenberg Air Force Base called the California Spaceport, where they were taking some of their old, missile facilities, and the idea was to make them available for civilian use. So that was actually kind of cool because then, they could track our rocket and various other things. And there's actually kind of a funny story about that. When they assigned us they said, okay, we've got a launch site for you to use. It's a decommissioned ICBM site. And I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. He says, oh, it's even more interesting than you realize. You see, I had to contact my counterpart over in Russia and let them know what you guys were doing. So if they saw a heat bloom on the known location of an ICBM site, they wouldn't get the wrong idea,
Right.
So we had a lot of interesting complications with that. The contest expired before we could actually get the launch done.
Wow.
But we were the first amateur group to obtain a license from the FAA to go into outer space,
Okay.
which you do need to do, and that was actually the biggest problem. The biggest problem was bureaucracy,
Right.
and I think that may have been part of the point of the whole contest, was to demonstrate
Trying to
that
cut through the red tape or
the technology is there.
Mhm.
You can, it's possible, but as you say, it's the red tape. So that was
Wow.
actually a very interesting learning experience for me. I got so excited about it, I actually went back, even though I had finished school. I actually went back to a local community college and started
Mhm.
taking a bunch of math courses just so I could understand what the other guys were talking about.
Wow.
Um, I have this thing where if there's a concept or an idea that's really important and really big, and I don't understand it, it kind of pisses me off. You know,
Yeah.
I don't like not knowing what's happening with the big ideas.
What going back to your childhood, was there
Mhm.
something in your childhood that kind of drove this desire for higher learning that you have?
My mom and my dad, they were both college graduates.
Mhm.
Um, but my mother in particular, she was very, very passionate about learning. She didn't just kind of sit down and, kind of go all tiger mom on me or anything like that. She just made sure that we were exposed to a lot of resources for learning. So we were always making trips to the public library. She was a member of the Friends of the Public Library. Um, she once had a project that was assigned to her. The library was going to do something where they were going to make replicas of famous paintings available for people to check out and
Oh,
hang on their
wow.
wall for a few weeks. It was cool. And they assigned her the task of coming up with the first 100 paintings that would go in that collection. So I remember the house just being full of all these art books and prints and
Right.
everything. And she's explaining this stuff to me. And I'm just kind of almost overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing, too, is that the year before I was born, there was Sputnik.
Right.
Russians launched the satellite, and it
Mhm.
freaked us the hell out. I mean, we had been told that Russia was, basically a bunch of intoxicated factory workers and illiterate tundra farmers, and suddenly, they've got
Right.
this thing orbiting the Earth, and we don't. So the following year, Congress passed and President Eisenhower signed the Defense and Education Act,
Mhm.
where funding for public education just poured out at levels you'd normally see for the Pentagon, because he believed, correctly in my view, that a well educated population is a matter of national security.
Yeah.
So by the time I hit first grade, all those lovely, lovely learning tools and well paid teachers and carefully thought out curricula were just waiting for me. And
Mhm.
I had a ball. It was the greatest thing. Education, it's hard to imagine now, but back then, education was not just, something you did. Being kind of nerdy and being smart was actually patriotic.
Yes.
And you don't have that same feeling today. So
Right.
that's kind of the environment I grew up in. And
Yeah.
for me, the idea of higher education was as natural as anything.
Yeah. I think during that time frame, especially when you had the rise of shows like Star Treks and the
Hmm.
Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon all during that time, it
Hmm.
created this mystery and wonder, and people felt like, well, I got to get into science to learn how to do these things, because if these things are really possible, just imagine the creativity of people just to think of just doing these things. Now you got to have scientists that can actually figure out, well, can we really do these things? And
Hmm.
so yeah, I can see that really driving a force for education during that time frame. The
Yeah,
propaganda during it, because there was a real propaganda push during
huge.
that time frame. Russia's the big enemy, and
Hmm.
so yeah, I can see that, man. That's really incredible.
Yeah.
So for you, kind of explain, like, when you got into college, what was it that just said, okay, this is the direction I want to go? Because a lot of people go to college today without a direction. They don't know what they want to do, and they spend years and years and years. What was the crystallizing moment for you to say, okay, this is the direction I want to go?
Oh boy, it took me a while to reach that point.
Hmm.
It did, because when I started out, I just kept changing my major.
Yeah.
I started out in theater with an
Hmm.
emphasis in acting, of all things.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think I went to history and then to
Hmm.
earth science. And gradually, I realized I had to settle on something. And I had become really interested in um, the ancient history of the Middle East, partly because it's the land of the Bible.
Right.
It's the land of the great Abrahamic religions, and I was
Hmm.
kind of intrigued by that. And my church leaders actually encouraged me, say, "Hey,
Hmm.
that's good. We need more people who understand this stuff." And the other thing was that I'm kind of a generalist by nature,
Hmm.
and studying the ancient Near East was about as close as you could get to being a generalist in a specialized field, because it's history, it's archaeology, it's religion, it's literature, it's languages, it's all that stuff kind of wrapped together. You don't
Hmm.
you do have a lane and you're supposed to stay in it, but it's a
Right.
pretty broad lane. Uh, and besides, I just kind of figured, look, I've got to pick something. This is it. I picked it because it
Right.
was interesting. You know,
Yeah.
I did have a career path mapped out, but by the time I
Hmm.
graduated, that had all kind of gone away. So, you know.
I think a lot of times we have to have something that interests us to keep us going.
Hmm.
With my daughter, when she got ready to go to college, I said, "Hey, what do you want to major in?" And she says, "Well, I'm good at art. I want to do art." I said, "No, we're not going to major in art." I said, you got to go
Hmm.
into something that's going to get you out of the house and keep you out of the house. You can always come home to visit, but we want you to be able to get into a career field that's going to get you out there and be successful and be able to stand
Hmm.
on your own. So you can minor in art, you can take some electives in art, but that's not going to be your major. Let's look at what that pays.
Hmm.
So she graduated from our high school, valedictorian of our high school. She
Nice.
graduated college. She ended up with a academic scholarship. She
Uh-huh.
graduated summa cum laude. Um, and when she graduated college, she applied for a job at a TV company.
Hmm.
They hired her over the phone. They looked at her resume
Wow.
and called her up. They talked to
Uh-huh.
her over the phone for about 30 minutes and hired her over the phone, sight unseen, and said, "We can deal with smart people."
Hmm.
And that's where I think a lot of people miss on the education side of it,
Hmm.
that education does open so many doors for people, and I think that we've just given it such a bad rap because of the price tag that comes along with education. I'm like, you don't have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. You don't have to
Hmm.
run yourself into debt for the next 60 years to have a good career. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of finding your lane and what you want to do with it. But also with you, let's talk about your university.
Hmm.
What was the mindset to start your own university?
Well, that was kind of a wild path, and
Hmm.
it basically started with my getting mugged in East Palo Alto one dark Sunday
Oh,
evening
wow.
in the
Mhm.
late '90s. I was still in graduate school, and we were living in. My wife and I were both in graduate school. We were basically
Okay.
putting each other through college. Um,
Mhm.
and long story short, I we were living across the street from a place called East Palo Alto, which at the time
Hmm.
was kind of the unofficial homicide capital of the United States. There were 46 homicides in a township less than a quarter of a square mile.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was a rough neighborhood. Um, I wasn't badly hurt, but I was mentally shaken by it
Yeah.
and realized, okay, this excellent education that I have has some pretty big gaps. So I started looking around for a place to learn how to protect myself.
Hmm.
I didn't have the money or the time to do it yet, but I encountered this one place that I went to after I graduated. It was a school in San Jose that specialized in training high threat level executive protection specialists.
Hmm.
And the guy who ran it what had been a champion Muay Thai fighter
Hmm.
back in India,
Hmm.
and he was also anti counterterrorism and executive protection and intelligence specialist as well. And Muay Thai was very new at that time. I'd never even heard of it. But
Right.
what got me into that was I asked him, okay, why should I go with you instead of signing up for a karate class at the YMCA? He says, well, they teach martial arts as a sport. We teach it as a job skill. I thought, okay,
Mm.
good answer. Here's my check.
Yeah.
So I'm going along. It's about a year into this. The guy Nirmalia, the head of the school. He is patiently working with this desk-bound academic wimp, trying to put him in touch with his inner badass. And about a year into this, we're taking a break, and I let slip that I have an advanced degree from Berkeley. And he perks up and he says, "Could I see you in my office for a minute?" And I says, "Okay." I mean, usually, "Can I see you in my office?" is not something you want to hear. But we go in there, and he says, "Listen, I have this dream. I've got this little school right here. We can issue like certificates that are certified by the state.
Right.
But I want to take this school and I want to turn it into an actual, honest to God university with bachelor's and
Wow.
master's and doctoral programs.
Yeah.
And I want to expand into intelligence and counterterrorism."
Mm.
And he says, the problem is I need people with advanced degrees to help me do this. You told me that you're a technical writer right now, and I need people who can document stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and he says, I've just got a business degree from a university in India that no one's ever heard of. I don't have the credentials that we need for something like that.
Right.
And then he leans across the table and he looks me in the eye and he says, how would you like to co-found a university with me?
Wow.
And it's like, what can you possibly
Yeah.
say? I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, holy crap. And I says, look, I got to be honest with you. My understanding of the intelligence world is basically that I've seen every episode of Get Smart. you know uh, you know uh, but if you're willing to let me work with you, I am in all the way.
Hmm.
So we took that, and then there was one more gentleman. There were three of us originally, and the third gentleman was a former Secret Service agent.
Hmm.
And we slowly started the process of taking the school and turning it into a university.
Wow.
And that was instructive because then you see everything that goes on under the hood. You understand how universities work, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. And what I also discovered through this process was that
Hmm.
it is possible to start your own university. It's a lot of work and it's
Yes.
very hard. And if you want to go for accreditation, and you may or may not want to do that, state approval was the first step. Um, if you're willing to keep it small, be smart, and stay hyper organized, it is possible to run an entirely legitimate university out of a spare bedroom.
Wow.
So that was kind of a revelation for me working with that. The other very cool thing was that I got to work with a whole bunch of people that we brought in to help us develop the faculty, to create the courses, and I was deeply involved in that. We had people from the CIA, the FBI, Secret Service, NSA, DIA, Special Forces. I think we even had somebody from the Canadian Mounted Police, Australian Bureau of Investigation, India Special Forces, MI6, and they were all contributing to this curriculum, which frankly had never been done before. Nothing quite like this. I mean, you had degrees that involved intelligence, but it was all policy. We were teaching tradecraft. We were teaching covert operations, how to develop cover, how to communicate clandestinely, how to place a mole in someone else's organization, how to spot the mole in your organization. Not the kind of thing I had kind of expected to be doing when I was back at Berkeley trying to read clay tablets,
Right.
But what an experience. And the other cool thing about that was that learning to think like an intelligence person gives you an extra bit of heft to your intellectual toolkit, especially when you're in an environment where everyone's trying to BS you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. We are going to take a quick break, but before we go to our break, we got to let you know about our sponsor. You already know who it is. It's Manscaped. Gentlemen, and the brave partners who love them, let's talk about landscaping. No, not your lawn. We're talking about personal property maintenance. Introducing from Manscaped, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the only tool that makes trimming your hedges feel like upgrading your sports car. With precision blades, skin-safe technology, and a light so bright you could land a plane. This thing doesn't just mow, it glides. So say goodbye to nicks, snags, and that terrifying moment when your clipper sounds like it's eating your furniture. Listen, guys, use our code TMSP20 and get 20% off your first order and free shipping, because if it's free, I'll take 3. So fellas, if you want your front yard to look well presentable, then get the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra from Manscaped, because your body deserves curb appeal too. We are back here on the Manspace Podcast with Dr. Sheldon Greaves. Well, sir, your book, The Guerrilla Scholar's Handbook. Now, tell us a little bit about that book, because when you look at the title of it, you're probably thinking it's, about zoology or something like that, So tell us a little bit about that book.
Okay. I coined the term Guerrilla Scholarship back when I was in graduate school. It was just a way to describe what I was doing and the fact that I couldn't settle on any one particular area of interest. But I'm using guerrilla in the sense of unconventional, like guerrilla warfare is unconventional warfare. One of the things that made graduate school interesting in more ways than one was that I wasn't the only one in graduate school. As I mentioned, my spouse was also pursuing a PhD at Stanford. And we didn't have a lot of money. So, as our scholarships her scholarship ran out, I had a small loan. She's the smart one. We adopted a scheme where I would get a job and she would go to school for a year. And then the next year she would find a job and I would go to school for a year, and we'd kind of go back and forth. And it took longer, but we did both eventually finish and and we were still married by the, after all that. It still are. But what that meant was that when I wasn't enrolled in school, I still needed to keep up with the field, and I still needed to be working on stuff, and I still needed to be keeping things fresh, and
Right.
working on languages and whatever. So I had to get creative because I didn't have access to the usual tools that I would have when I was at the university.
Hmm.
So I had to find other ways of locating papers. I had to find other sources
Mm.
of um, documents and books and what have you. And that was kind of one way, that was one aspect of guerrilla scholarship. The other was something kind of grew out of the fact that I've never really been comfortable specializing in any one thing. Um,
Mm.
Even while we were in graduate school, the two of us, we both have a very strong interest in science and scientific topics. So, alongside my uh, subscription to Archaeology magazine, we also had a subscription to Scientific American, which I probably read at least as much as I did archaeology.
Mhm.
We were members of the local astronomical society. I participated in a number of discussion seminars on nanotechnology, which was brand new. I mean, it was just starting out, and everybody was all excited about it. And I was like the only
Yeah.
humanities guy in the room, which was kind of funny. But
Mhm.
Guerrilla Scholarship also takes the position that you shouldn't restrict yourself just to one discipline. You should be willing to cross disciplinary lines. You have to be
Right.
careful about it and
Yeah.
not make a fool of yourself, but it's something you should do. Um, and the other is the assertion that a lot of the really interesting and innovative thinking nowadays, and actually for some time, has been taking place outside of the university.
Hmm.
You've got some thinkers and what they used to call public intellectuals
Right.
that in the past have done some really amazing things. One of my favorite examples is there was an author, Barbara Tuchman, who
Mhm.
wrote a number of history related books. She wrote a book on the 14th century. She wrote a book on the origins of World War One, rather. She
Mhm.
wrote a book on the emergence of Israel and Palestine. Now, if she had been a historian at a university, there is absolutely no way that she could have written on such a wide range of historical topics. They would have said, no, 14th century, you
Right.
stay there. I
Right.
One of my professors, in fact, someone that I profile in the book, um, wasn't willing to do that, and ultimately he lost his job over it
Well.
because he was supposed to be studying Central Asia and the
Mhm.
Uzbek language, but he developed this interest in he had an interest in aviation from childhood, and he
Mhm.
did some really interesting, groundbreaking work on the history of the Turkish Air Force, which is kind of a
Mhm.
weird corner topic. But he did some work on it that was so impressive that after he was basically let go, he was invited by the Turkish government to come and deliver a paper at the 100th anniversary gala celebration of the Turkish Air
Wow.
Force and receive a special award. And he got to meet all these legendary pilots and
Mhm.
officers. And it was a really amazing thing for him. The other thing that he loved to do since he was a kid, he used to love to collect um, pictures of aircraft that showed the aircraft from three different angles. So, like, top view, side view,
Right.
that sort of thing. And he continued to do this in when he was a professor, and he used university resources to do it. And eventually, he ended up with this massive collection. It was like something like 14,000 pages of material in like 183 loose leaf binders.
Mhm.
And but that also got him in trouble. Well, he eventually took that and he donated it to the Flight Museum in Seattle, which is like one of the largest nonprofit aviation museums in the world. And they got this thing and they started looking at it. And he got a call. This is, Dr. Montgomery, I got to tell you, we think this collection is the most complete of its kind in the world. And we are going to hire a few scholars to track down the few remaining aircraft you don't have so that this thing is absolutely complete. I mean, talk about vindication.
Yeah.
That thing is now like one of the most used resources at their museum. So, sometimes, you can stay in your lane and you can try to go out of your lane. There are risks, but there are also rewards. And that's also
Absolutely.
kind of what Guerrilla Scholarship for me is about. It's about going where maybe you're not supposed to go.
Would you consider this professor to be more of a mentor for you?
He was in many respects. He was. He guided me. Well, I think what really kind of bonded us was I was just finishing my bachelor's degree, and I had met my future wife, who was just finishing her master's degree, and she had applied to and just been accepted into doctoral programs at Stanford and Yale. And I wanted to apply to a degree program myself, but I needed a master's degree in order to do it, and I didn't have one. So she talked to the different universities and said, well, can you hold off my acceptance for a while? Yale said no. Stanford said, we'll give you a year. So I go to Dr. Montgomery and I say, look, I know a master's degree is a 2-year program, but I've got to get one in 1 year. Can you help me figure this out? and we did. It was ugly, but we got it done. And I did get accepted, into a school in the Bay Area, namely Berkeley. So that all worked out. So, we go way back. Now, he passed away a few years ago, unfortunately, but he was one of those professors who would keep in touch with a few of his students, and he did that with me. And just a superb teacher in the classroom, just really, really good.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So going back to your book, what's something that you would want readers to take away from your book?
I would like people to take away from this book the idea that learning is not just about making a living. It's about living. It's about the pleasure of learning. I mentioned in the introduction that there are a few phrases that puzzle me more than makes learning fun. To me, that's like saying makes breathing fun. I mean, learning is just what we do. It's how we interact with the world. And the other thing too is that President Eisenhower, even as he was, he gave that famous farewell address where he gave us the phrase military-industrial complex.
Right.
But he also said that the one safeguard against the excesses of the military-industrial complex was what he called an alert and knowledgeable citizenry. And I kind of want to revive this idea on the civic level, on the individual level, that we as citizens, we kind of have the obligation to know what's going on and to be intelligent and to be able to talk through problems in a way that leads to meaningful and useful solutions. I give a number of examples in one of the chapters of how people formed learning organizations just to kind of work through things. One of my favorites is a section on African American literary societies that were formed
Mm-hmm.
before the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in these societies that a lot of the abolitionist politics and philosophy kind of got thrashed out.
Mm-hmm.
And they also educated a large cadre of African American voices who then went on to publish newspapers and write books and go on the lecture circuit and
Mm-hmm.
basically laid the intellectual groundwork for uh, the abolition of slavery. And
Right.
that started in these small groups of people, mostly women and African Americans, people who couldn't vote, by the way,
Right.
but still managed to have this kind of impact. And they did
Wow.
it by getting together and learning together.
Wow. For you putting this book together, what would you feel was the most challenging part of putting it together?
Uh, I would say there were two answers to that. The first was knowing when to stop. Uh, you know, uh,
It's like
because
Pringles.
there's
You just can't stop, right?
oh yeah. It's like I've got I've got an entire filing cabinet full of stuff that could go in, but there isn't room for it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another book in
Part
there. I
two
don't know.
somewhere. Yeah.
The other one was the publishing industry. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
now, uh, I went through a number of agents or tried to, and what I've discovered is that uh, a conventional publisher won't even look at you unless you have a really big social media following.
True.
Now, I I can go out there and kind of BS my way around social media, which I'm not good at, or I can sit down and write half decent content for a book, which I think I am good at, but I can't do both. So that kind of led me to self-publishing. Now, fortunately, self-publishing has become much, much better
Yes.
than it was. I published mine through spines.com, which is
Mm-hmm.
I think is an excellent venue for an aspiring author if you want to self-publish. And there are others out there that are also
Yeah.
very good. But those were the two
Awesome.
biggest obstacles. Um, that and the fact that I was just kind of doing it in my spare time.
Mhm.
So,
So, what would you say to someone who is aspiring to go down this path of higher learning?
mhm.
What would be your words of wisdom to them?
The first thing I would do is start keeping a notebook,
Mhm.
a daily notebook that you sit down and just write. It can be anything, but get in the habit of going over your thoughts and thinking about stuff, reacting to the world, reacting to what you read, what you see. Do this every day. Um, and then as you finish each little book of thoughts, put it aside for a while you start your next one, and then in a few months go back to it, read through it, and if you find an idea that strikes you as, hey, that was really kind of that was a good idea, that was a good insight,
Yeah.
write it down on a I use a 3x5 card. And what you do then is you build up a collection of things that could form a paragraph, an essay,
Mhm.
a presentation. It's also a great way to see where your interests really lie,
Right.
what really grabs you. Um, the other thing that I would recommend is um, go visit your local public library and get to know the reference librarian. Get on a first name basis with this person, because um, Google has a lot of stuff, but it doesn't have everything.
Very true.
And you may think that you know what's in your public library. No, you don't. You really don't. Reference librarians are magicians. They can
Mhm.
point you to things that you had absolutely no idea even existed. And that's really the important key is that if you do this and you really learn how to dig and follow a lead, you can find yourself in possession of ideas and resources and references that even the experts might not know about.
Mm,
And that's the real payoff. Where you can say, well, now wait a minute, there was this letter that so and so wrote back in whenever, and I guess the third thing I would say is be very careful about using AI.
yes.
AI is great if you want to say, explain this to me, tell me what this is about. What's the definition of thus and such? Or I've got this information. Can you put it into a table for me? You know,
Yeah.
the kind of grunt work that, but don't let it do your writing for you. Don't let it
Yeah.
do that. Don't let it do too much of the organizing and stuff. It's great for brainstorming, but once you've got the ideas, they need to be yours. The
Hmm.
idea is we've committed way too much knowledge to the internet. Uh, and we need to be more diligent about putting it in here where it
Hmm.
belongs. That way, it makes sense to us. You know, um, Back in the medieval times, you had these monks that were copying, manuscripts and preserving a lot of important knowledge. But for them, it wasn't really preserved just by writing it in a book. They also internalized it. So you
Hmm.
had people who had not just, written out, the speeches of Cicero or whatever. They had them memorized and could recite them, and you could even say, well, tell me all the times when Cicero mentioned this, and they could just do it off the top of their head. You know,
Right.
um, if it's just in an external storage medium, it's not so much preserved as embalmed. Uh,
Mm,
the knowledge doesn't really matter until it's in you and you are
yeah.
intimately familiar with it. And
Absolutely.
that's an important aspect of this whole thing too. It's got to be part of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like how you put that together.
Mhm.
So your book, where can the Man Space Nation, which is our listeners, where can they find your book and where can they find more about you as far as your website and social media handles?
Mhm. Right now, my social media presence is basically Substack. I have a Substack called the Guerrilla Scholar. I also have a Facebook page, Guerrilla Scholar, and I'm also on Blue Sky. I try to not do too much social media because it just takes up so much of my time. As far as the book is concerned, it's available in hardcover, softcover, um, electronic, and audiobook.
Okay.
The all but the audiobook, those are all available on Amazon.
Okay.
You can also locate it, I think, through bookfinder.com. And if you check with your local bookstore, they can probably order it for you if you want to support your local indie bookstore. The audiobook, I'm pretty sure it's on Google Play,
Okay.
and there are a number of others that carry it. You can also go to my publisher, spines.com,
Mhm.
and they can. That's where you can find the audio version. That they will
Okay.
list all of the places that have that, and then if anyone else is also interested, you can also find my podcast on the Old Testament. It's a 50-part series based on a course I taught at Stanford University in 2013. Um, you can pretty much find that on any of the major podcast uh, websites. Just look for "Discovering the Old Testament" and my
Okay.
name, and you'll find it. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Before we close out with you, do you have one final word that you would love to share with the Man Space Nation?
yeah, there is a quote that I open the book with that I uh, that I kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. And I think it's by Stephen Jay Gould, naturalist. And it goes something like this. It says, I am somehow less concerned with the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than I am with the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. I think there's a vast reservoir of wasted talent out there, and I'd love to see it surface.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here in the Man Space. This was a very enlightening conversation. Make sure, Man Space Nation, you go out there, check out his website, check out his social media, and go get the book wherever you want to get it, whether it's audio, electronic, hard copy, soft copy. Get the book and check out his podcast as well. And Man Space Nation will be back with just a little bit more of the Man Space podcast. As we do each week, we like to close the show with just a little bit of inspiration. Change. Change is like that one friend who shows up uninvited, eats your snacks, rearranges all your furniture, but somehow when they leave, your place actually looks better. At first, change is uncomfortable. It messes with your routine. Makes your brain shout, hey, we're fine just the way we were. But here's the twist. Growth never happens in your comfort zone. If it did, sweatpants would come with diplomas. Think of change like learning to ride a bike. Wobbly, scary, and a few dramatic, I can do this moments. But then there's that one day, you're flying down the street, wind whipping through your hair, and you're pretending you're in a movie montage. You see, the truth is, change rarely feels good at the start, but give it time, and it turns chaos into clarity. You outgrow old fears, discover new strength, and start to see that the unknown isn't the enemy, it's the doorway. So here's to embracing the awkward, the uncertainty, and the slightly terrifying. Because on the other side of change is a more fully alive version of you. And yes, there's still snacks allowed on this journey. So Man Space Nation, here's your challenge. Embrace change. It may not always feel good. Sometimes things that don't feel good are actually good for you. Until next time. Man Space Nation, don't be afraid of change. Change is sometimes it is good for you. We've seen so much change over time, and a lot of that you can find out along with our guest that we had today, because a lot of it is being adaptive to things that are going on around you and being able to be flexible and move with the environment. So change is a good thing. Man Space Nation, make sure you check out our guest that we had today, Dr. Sheldon Greaves. We want to thank him once again for spending his time with us. And you know what we do here on the Man Space Podcast every Thursday night on WTMSTV.com. It is Throwback Thursday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, WTMSTV.com. You get back-to-back episodes of the Man Space Podcast. And on Monday nights on WTMSTV.com, you get the latest episode 2 days early before it's released to the rest of the world. So WTMS TV, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the latest episodes of the Man Space Podcast. Now, once again, my he's not here, so I have to do his line. We're out of here. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Man Space.
Whichever platform you listen to us on, make sure you subscribe and don't miss a show.
Remember to keep up with all the Man Space updates on our website, themanspacepodcast.com.
And you can follow us on Instagram at manspacenat1.
Until next time, Man Space Nation, he's Les, I am Russ, and we are out
of here.